Yeah, okay, perfect. So thanks everyone, and thanks certainly Ursula and Doug and all the crew for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. I'm always really excited to talk about sleep because, you know, it's something that I think everyone is interested in. You know, everyone needs to do it, and I think we need to have more discussions about how sleep impacts so many parts of our physiology and function. So let me just see if I can go here. So if I said to you that there was a pill or a cream that did this, okay, so scientists have discovered a revolutionary new treatment. It's now in a pill or it's in a cream that makes you live longer. It enhances your memory. It makes you more creative. It makes you look more attractive. It keeps you slim. It lowers food cravings. It protects you from all these diseases, including arthritis. It will ward off infectious disease, colds and flus, lower your risk of heart attack and stroke, not to mention diabetes. You'll even feel happier, less depressed and less anxious. Are you interested? Now, I think if I asked that of anyone in the audience, everyone would say, where can I get that? And that is sleep. Sleep is our most underprescribed medicine of our time. Yet it is the most powerful. So I'm showing you my two little ladies, Lizzie and Faye, who are now 7 and 6, you know, having just glorious sleep. Sleep is our life support system. It fuels every aspect of our body. There is not one biological function that we know of that is not harmed by lack of sleep. So the question really is, why aren't we making sleep more of a priority? And in reality, because sleep can do all these things, we could literally just sleep our way to the top. So we are the only species on the planet that intentionally deprives ourselves of sleep, okay? And we do this through a number of mechanisms with our alarm clocks, with our cell phones, etc. 100 years ago, less than 2% of us slept 6 hours or less a night. Now, almost 30, and actually in Ireland, it looks like 30 to 40% of us sleep less than 6 hours a night. And that is sleep deprivation. We are not getting enough sleep if we only give ourselves 6 hours of sleep a night. A study was done. Now, it wasn't a scientific study. It was carried out by Amoric Research back in 2017. But I think it's great to prove the point because it does show the landscape in Ireland. So this was conducted, I think, at the same time when they ran a program on the science of sleep with RTE. But look at the figures, right? 41% of us get 6 hours of sleep or less on an average weeknight. 18% of Irish adults use sleeping tablets to get to sleep in the last month. Now, we already know that prescriptions of sleep medications have really increased throughout this pandemic. And interestingly, from a gender basis, females are more likely than males to sleep 7 hours or less on any day of the week. And we know that that's certainly females between the ages of 30 and 60 years old. So in reality, we all know now about pandemics, but there has been a silent epidemic really throughout the whole of the Western world, and that is sleep deprivation. So why do we not appreciate the importance of sleep? And I think one of the reasons why we don't appreciate the importance of sleep is because there's so many factors trying to get our attention at the time when we're supposed to be asleep. If you think about 100 years ago, we as a species did not have any of the distractions which we have now, such that, you know, the CEO of Netflix declared that its biggest competitor was actually sleep. So all of these companies, Netflix, YouTube, Amazon, all of these companies make money when you are awake. They don't make any money when you are asleep. So they're always trying to vie for your attention, and it's good business for them if you sleep less, not more. So in this talk, I'm going to go through 3 parts. What is happening when we sleep? Why your immune system needs you to sleep, and how can we use our body clocks to improve our sleep? So what is happening when we sleep? Well, first of all, let's just quickly look at the sleep cycle. Now, let's not get too bogged down by this, but just know that there's different phases of sleep, okay? There's non-REM sleep, which also includes the slow wave sleep, or there's REM sleep. And REM sleep is the dreaming sleep. So the reason why you often remember your dreams is that we're in more REM sleep just before we become awake. So we go through these cyclical patterns where we go into non-REM, back to REM, non-REM, but we tend to consume more non-REM at the start of our sleep cycle, and then we tend to consume more REM at the end. And non-REM dominates the first half of the night, and then REM dominates the second half of the night. Now, both of those two phases of sleep have their own sort of important function. And this even carries over to their importance in terms of what they do to our immune system. But we can measure our brain waves when we sleep. And there's been, there's a number of our researchers that do sleep studies. There's a sleep research center, I think in St. Vincent's. Doug, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But what you can see is when we do these sleep studies, we just connect these electrodes to individuals' brains just to be able to monitor their brain activity when we sleep. And what's really interesting is this is the trace that comes out, right, when we're awake. Okay, so this is what our brain activity looks like when we're awake. This is what it looks like when we're in non-REM sleep, right? So you've got these kind of peaks and troughs. But look at what it looks like when we're in REM sleep. It looks exactly the same as when we're awake. So this idea that our brains go to sleep when we go to sleep is completely incorrect. Our brains are as active, or even more active, when we're asleep than when we're awake. So that sort of puts paid to the whole idea of you sleep when you're dead. So I won't go through what these do, but this is just what non-REM sleep is all about: reflection, and REM sleep is all about integration. So yeah, the idea that I will sleep when I'm dead is completely incorrect, because I can tell you now, when you're dead, but when you're asleep, your brain is doing something very different. Now, Donald Trump, I was always interested when he was in power of when does he sleep? So this is a Twitter feed by Donald Trump. And what you can see is the number of tweets that he was doing each hour from January 20th to July 7th. Okay. And what we can see is Donald Trump was always pretty active on the Twitter machine, very active during the early morning hours, right active all during the afternoon and even into the evening. But he was still active during the night. So the question was, when does he sleep? Now, if we can remember what Donald Trump's presidency was like in terms of erratic behavior, I think maybe sleep deprivation might have been the cause of it. So if that doesn't cause you to jump into your beds at about 9 p.m. every night, I don't know what will. So why your immune system needs you to sleep. So what's going on there? So if we think about our immune system, and certainly I know that a lot of you folks, because you're affected by inflammatory arthritis, that you're hearing a lot about your immune system. But I just think it's always good to remind everyone, what is our immune system? Our immune system really is just a collection of cells traveling around the body. And as Mary mentioned, we can talk about our B cells or our macrophages, and they form different parts of our immune system. But really, our immune system is the liquid organ, and that's how I like to think about it. We think about organs as in our heart and as in our stomach and as our kidney. They're in a certain place and they're very distinct. But our immune system is basically just these cells, the B cells, the T cells, the macrophages that are just constantly traveling around our body. They will go into every organ in our body and do their work if needs be. And I always love to show this slide. So our immune system causes the inflammatory reaction. And I robbed this slide from my mentor and good friend, Professor Luke O'Neill, who is a household name at this point. And there's 5 cardinal signs of inflammation that we know. So inflammation normally is a good thing. If you hit your elbow off a table, let's say, it's an inflammatory reaction that happens there. You might get some swelling, some bruising, but in time it clears up. Okay, so inflammation is not always bad. And the 5 cardinal signs of inflammation inflammation are redness, heat, pain, swelling, loss of function. Now, I love this slide because it's a real generational slide, because when you show this slide actually to the students of RCSI, they have no idea who Monica Lewinsky is. So they actually just don't get this slide. But anyway, but as I said, inflammation normally is a good thing. But in diseases like inflammatory arthritis, inflammation really bears a dark side. So inflammatory arthritis, what we have is the inflammatory process has gotten out of hand. You know, and the way I think about it is the immune cells which direct that inflammatory process have gone rogue. You know, they do their job, but they do it maybe for too long, or they might do it in the wrong area, but they have certainly gone rogue. So our immune system, this is where sleep comes into it. Our immune system works differently by day or by night. So by day, our immune system and those cells which I spoke about are very much primed for attack. And the reason they're primed, you know, to attack, as in maybe a bug or to clear up some injury, is because you're much more likely during the day for those things to happen. You're much more likely to be infected by a bacteria or a virus during the daytime when we're awake, when we're eating, when we're up and about, interacting with people. So our immune system does something very different during the day. During the night, our immune system, as we're asleep, and as you said, as I mentioned, our brain activity is very high even when we're asleep. Our immune system is also very active when we're asleep, but it's doing a different job. It's essentially memorizing what it saw maybe that day, and sort of kind of making sense of things and thinking, if I saw that again, would I react as strongly, or maybe I wouldn't react so much at all. So in the way I think about it is, our immune system trains while we sleep, right? So it's like this picture here, you know, it's an army in training. And thus it is ready to attack because it's done that training when it's asleep, when we're asleep. During the daytime here, it's ready then to attack efficiently and sensibly during the day. Okay? But then, if we deprive ourselves of sleep, and if we stay awake for too long, if we only get maybe 5 or 6 hours of sleep a day, which we know a huge proportion of the Irish population is only getting that amount, okay, well, what happens to your immune system then? Okay, so with sleep deprivation, during the day, and I apologize if there's any Donald Trump fans out there, because okay, this is the last Donald Trump gag that I have. But during the day, your immune system will look less like this, okay? It won't be efficient. It won't be like the Navy SEALs, right? It'll actually look more like this: disorganized, no leadership, okay? Bit haphazard, not really knowing what it's doing. That's what sleep deprivation does to our immune system. It basically causes our immune system to go rogue. And that is also what happens in inflammatory arthritis. Our immune system goes rogue. And that's why sleep is so important to prevent some of the features of inflammatory arthritis. What we know is that lack of sleep messes up our genes. It actually changes the gene signature that we have. And it increases that rogue inflammation, which I spoke about. So they did a study where they looked at the genes that were being expressed when we only had 6 hours of sleep for 1 week, only just 1 week. And what they saw was that the real sort of organized Navy SEAL type immune function, that went down with sleep deprivation, but things like tumor promoting and inflammation and then cardiovascular disease, that went up. Those genes went up when you only had 6 hours of sleep or less. There's a real bidirectional relationship between inflammatory arthritis and sleep. So with inflammatory arthritis, what I believe is happening, this is just me looking at some of the research papers though, is that individuals, and obviously you guys know much more about this, with inflammatory arthritis, and it's possibly due to the pain of inflammatory arthritis and the discomfort of it, Many individuals get fragmented sleep, sleep disturbance, overall poor sleep quality. And then the problem with that is that those features of sort of poor sleep, right, as I just mentioned, causes dysregulated inflammation. And actually, there's some studies to show that poor sleep reduces our pain threshold as well. So that even further impacts this cycle of inflammatory arthritis in sleep, you know, where heightened inflammatory arthritis gives poor sleep, and poor sleep feeds back and actually affects features of inflammatory arthritis. So the question then is, you know, how can we improve how can we improve sleep? And I think, you know, if you look at many magazines, or if you just look up the National Sleep Foundation in the US, you know, there's lots of tips about sleep hygiene. And I'm not going to go through those. What I'm going to talk to you a little bit about is this connection between our body clock and sleep, and why, by actually following a little bit of the tricks and the trades of our body clock, we can improve our sleep. So the first thing is, well, what is our body clock? So there's a reason why I have the world behind me, is because I'm a body clock researcher. And I'm really interested in understanding this body clock. And our body clock is essentially our internal system that tells us what time of day it is. Each cell in our body basically has a little clock, and they're all ticking along, hopefully, at the same time of day. And that instructs our body as to what time of day it is. And that's really important. We really need a body clock, because we don't live in a constant environment. We live in this highly predictable 24-hour cycle. And the reason for that is because this big piece of rock that we're all living on rotates every 24 hours. So there's periods of day when we're facing the sun, and there's periods of day when we're not, which gives us the light dark cycle. And that is the most predictable cycle that we have here on Earth, is that 24-hour cycle. So every single species on the planet needs some type of mechanism, internal mechanism, to allow it to tell the time of day. So now in modern age, you know, we all have so many devices now to tell us, you know, when we should sleep, you know, all these Fitbits, etc. But we don't need these devices to tell us when we should sleep. We already have it, and it is our body clock. Our body clock will naturally put us to sleep if we let it. So what I'm showing you here is just time of day on the bottom line here. And then I'm just showing you in our bodies what happens to two very important hormones that are controlled by our body clock. So what we see is this hormone called cortisol begins to increase, right, at around, say, 6 a.m. in the morning, and it's signaling for us to get up out of bed. That's our real get up and go hormone, right? But look at this other hormone in the blue line. That's melatonin. So melatonin, just by our body clock, it will do this naturally. Melatonin will increase in the evening time from about 8 p.m. onwards, right? And increase. And the reason why melatonin is important, and you've probably heard of melatonin before, is melatonin is our natural sleep aid. The way I like to think about it, it's like the official that fires the gun to start the race. The race is sleep, okay? Melatonin is the timing official that fires the starting pistol. It signals to the rest of our body that it's time to go to sleep. It signals darkness throughout the whole organism. But one of the problems is that, unlike our ancestors, we are exposing ourselves to far too much artificial light in the nighttime from all these devices that we have that have been generated to keep us awake, right? And that are running all these social media type programs that want to keep us awake, want to keep our attention. So light at night is negatively affecting our body clock's ability to produce melatonin. So I'm going to end on this. 3 tips to improve your sleep, and by doing so, hopefully improve your immune function and maybe, you know, some of the symptoms of your disease. And it's important to be body clock wise. So what I say to people is there's three aspects: be sleep aware, be food aware, be light aware. Okay, and that will tune your body clock to work really well. And because of that, you will get better sleep. So be light aware. In the blink of an evolutionary eye, right, we have gone from this type of environment where we were very much directed by the external light-dark cycle as to our behaviors. So when the sun went down, we went down. When the sun came up, we got up, right? But we've gone from that in a very short space of time to this, where we can be awake at any time of the evening or night. So the tip is expose yourself to outdoor light each day, especially in the morning. And when inside, if you can, sit beside windows. Minimize artificial light in the evening and night. The second thing is to be food aware. Now, you might be saying, what has this got to do with body clocks? And, maybe we'll touch on this later as well. But when you eat can actually be as important as what you eat. And eating during a certain time frame can actually boost your body clock function and promote better sleep. So really try to just eat within a 12-hour window if you can. Now, I find that hard enough. Some people can go to 10 or 8. I can't. So even, start small and even go to a 12-hour window for when you eat. And then the last thing, of course, is to be sleep aware. Make sleep a real priority. We should all be doing this, regardless of whether we have inflammatory arthritis or not. Think about sleep as the start of your day. Set an alarm clock for when you go to bed, actually not for when you should be getting up, not at the end. And maybe keep a sleep diary. Figure out how many hours sleep you're actually getting a night. And this is not what you might think it is, to have a sleep buddy, but have somebody who you talk to about how many hours of sleep you're getting to keep your boat on track. And the last thing I would say is think about putting this, we're all talking now about steps, and everyone is trying to get in their 10,000 or 15,000 steps. But really think about putting the same emphasis as you do on your steps, if you're doing that, on how many hours of daylight and how many hours of sleep you were also getting daily. And by doing that, you will improve your body clock, you will improve your sleep, and hopefully that will have an impact on everyone's immune system and certainly the inflammatory response. So with that, I'd just like to thank you for your attention, and I hope you all have many wonderful night's sleep, and maybe this might help just a little bit, getting a little bit more sleep than you did before. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Annie. That was really very, very interesting and very thought-provoking. We've got a couple of questions for you. So there's one or two actually who have mentioned that they work shifts. And so one question says they work 12-hour shifts day and night. And so what rest period would you recommend for someone with arthritis?
So, shift work is going to be very difficult. And Doug, I'd imagine you see that as well. Working shift work with inflammatory arthritis can be difficult. We're not designed to work shift work. We're not designed to work throughout the night. Now, there's not too much we can do about it because we live in a 24-hour environment, and we all need this in terms of healthcare, transport, all of that. The things I think that you can try to do, though, is a lot of people who do work shift work tend to actually put on weight, okay, because you're eating, at the wrong time of day. And one of the suggestions is to make sure that you've prepared food in advance, healthy food in advance that you will eat through the night, because when we're sleep deprived, what happens is our bodies actually crave the foods we shouldn't be having, the high carbohydrate type, high fat, high carbohydrate type food. So one of the things is to try to minimize what you're eating and try to have a healthier diet as you're working shift. Another thing is to try to, for your sleep, is to try, when you come off shift, especially from a night shift, is to try to minimize the amount of light you're getting as you're leaving the building, going back home. If you're some people finish their shift and could go straight to sleep. Other people, it takes them a while to go to sleep. But by minimizing outdoor light during that time will give you a better chance to actually get to go to sleep quicker and to stay asleep for longer as well.
Yeah, yeah. So one of our other guests has asked, when they say that their arthritis started after they started working shifts. So do you think that sleep deprivation can actually cause an inflammatory response can it trigger an inflammatory response in your opinion?
Yeah, Doug, that seems to be the evidence that sleep deprivation is causing, the chronic inflammatory state. And we can even see that if we look at measurements like C-reactive protein, IL-6, that those measurements actually will go up, even with a very short amount of sleep deprivation. So that's really interesting. There is connections. It's not been studied that well, the epidemiology evidence of shift work and arthritis. There's a lot of work in shift work and cardiovascular disease and cancer, but we did a very small study where we looked in the UK Biobank, and we could see a clear connection between shift work and incidence of arthritis. So there is definitely a connection there, and it's likely both sleep deprivation, because shift workers tend to some shift workers tend to sleep less, but also it's probably because that you're working at a time of day when your body clock just isn't prepped to work.
Yeah. So another one, which I'd be interested in your response is, if one suffers from insomnia, would sleeping pills be a yes or no?
So now I'm not a medical doctor, Doug. As as my mother said, I'm not the useful kind of doctor to have around the house. So my understanding is sleeping pills do not help with insomnia, because sleeping pills don't promote natural sleep. They promote sedation. Yeah. And really for insomnia, the thing that seems to work best is cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. And, a lot of the sleep hygiene tips don't work. That's people who have insomnia, they really need to talk to their clinician like you, Doug.
Well, actually, it's interesting. So people ask me this all the time, and I say, no, look, sleeping pills are not the answer. They're certainly not a long-term answer.
They're not a long-term answer. Like certainly, yes, if you've been through a trauma or things like that, sleeping tablets can sort of direct back the sleep cycle. Yeah, but for long-term, and there's actually a lot of quite alarming evidence about long-term use of sleeping tablets as well in terms of other conditions.
Yeah. And I'll be interested in what our other speakers have to say, but I always say a little bit of exercise actually is probably better in terms of improving your sleep than
exercise. Doug, exercise for sure, but not too late in the evening. Okay, so exercise, if you can do it, early morning or early or sort of early afternoon or mid afternoon is superb. You don't want to be exercising and then try to jump into bed, but morning light is really good as well, Doug, for sleep. And that's the one thing I would say. We think about sleep and preparing for sleep just the hour before we go to sleep, but really we need to think about sleep the full 16 hours that we're awake and do things that promote sleep in that full time.
Right. I've another, which I often say to patients, but I don't know whether I have a lot of evidence for it, but cigarette smoking, actually, some of the chemicals in cigarette smoke and actually stimulate the brain. And I always think that if they smoke in the evening time, particularly, that will actually stimulate their brain and prevent them from feeling sleepy and actually stop them from going to sleep. So I do think there's a significant association between cigarette smoking and sleeplessness.
Yes, yeah. And, even caffeine intake, we think caffeine has a half-life of 5 hours. We think that we can have a cup of coffee at, say, 4 o'clock, to keep us going for the next couple of hours while we work. And that mightn't impact on our sleep, but it does. Really, we should be limiting caffeine to the morning time. So at least then it's gone out of our system by the time we're about to go to sleep.
Yeah. So I think one last question here, which is very interesting in terms of the immune system, and that can clocks in specific immune cells in our body become out of sync while others are in sync? Or is it a systemic effect affecting all cells at once?
That's a superb question, I have to say. And that's exactly what we study, is the clocks in our immune systems. And yes, we actually think that some of our immune cells might be more sensitive to going off time than we'll say clocks will say in your liver or your kidney and your heart. Because they're kind of floating around, they don't have as much to kind of anchor them to what's going on. So we believe that some of the immune cells, which would be highly important in terms of arthritis, will go off kilter first.
Okay. This is an interesting question. I think we'll have to take this one as well. So a patient who says they have rheumatoid arthritis, and no matter how much sleep they get, they're still tired. So that's a common, I think it's a fairly common, a lot of people say, well, I sleep 10 hours a day or 12 hours a night and I still feel tired.
Yeah, so that, I would think then, Doug, is that the quality of the sleep that they're getting? Like a lot of time, even we do wake up, but we don't know we've woken up during sleep. And that could, you could have a period where you could have a lot of fragmented sleep. You may be sleeping, you're in the bed, you don't remember waking up, but you're probably not having that real restorative sleep. Now, there's a real sweet spot for sleep, and for most of us probably on this line who are adults, that's, between like 7 to 9 hours. Sleep deprivation is bad, but too much sleep is also bad as well. So one of the things that they do in order to try to kickstart sleep again is actually to sleep deprive patients. So maybe, it might be a case that individual might be spending too much time.
Too much time,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we're going to have to leave it there. Annie, thank you again for a fabulous talk, and I'll hand back to Ursula then.
I've got one question for Annie. So what's your own sleep pattern like?
Well, I can tell you, Ursula, right? So I am a lark, right? I like to get up early in the morning. Like, I am no fun at parties because like I'm the person who goes to bed. Like, I go to bed between, and like my family jokes about it. But I really prioritize sleep. I probably go to bed at 9:30. I'm probably asleep at 10 o'clock every evening. And this is why I hate daylight savings time, because it's just going to be too bright during the summer. So that's why we need to stop daylight savings time. That's the last thing I'll say. That was my last thing. Stop daylight savings time. If you're a politician, stop daylight savings time.
Thank you, Annie. And I think, as you know, we are plotting and planning some clockwork in inflammatory arthritis as well with you. So thanks very much. Great talk.